recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I want to thank you for your service to our country, both in the military as a prosecutor and as a law enforcement officer. I want to touch on three different areas. I want to start with the Rosen affidavit because it states in pertinent part there is probable cause to believe the reporter has committed a violation of the Espionage Act. And this is the phrase I want to focus on. At the very least, either as an aider and abettor and or a co-conspirator. If the standard is probable cause, why in the world would the affiant add the phrase at the very least if they weren't contemplating a prosecution?
I don't know why the person would have added that statement.
Well, you were a very distinguished federal prosecutor. I was not at all distinguished, but I was a prosecutor. I don't remember ever adding surplusage, extra wording to an application for a search warrant. So I'm vexed by why the affiant would say at the very least.
I just don't know.
Also in the application for search warrant, they requested a non-disclosure order citing the 5 different reasons. Now, it was my experience, and I assume yours, that the affiant is under oath when they appear before a judge.
Yes.
Do you know which of the 5 categories that would need to be shown for a non-disclosure order was testified to in this case? Which of the 5 reasons statutorily that you can seek a non-disclosure order were at play?
I'm not that familiar with the facts to be able to answer that.
But you would agree with me that when you're before a judge and you are swearing out your affidavit, if you're asked for a non-disclosure order, you have to have some evidence that one of those 5 factors is in play.
Well, I'm not all that familiar with the statute. I will say that when you file an affidavit, everything in there ought to be accurate, and you ought to be prepared to swear to every item in that.
All right. Do you ever recall discussing the Rosen investigation with the Attorney General?
No.
Do you know, well, let me ask you this. If the affiant said at the very least there is probable cause to believe a crime has been committed, was there discussion of indicting Rosen?
Not that I had.
If you had more than probable cause, why would there not be discussion of indicting?
Well, there may have been discussion, as you well know, with the Assistant United States Attorney and the agent in terms of what went in the affidavit. You've done any number of hundreds probably of affidavits yourself, and the discussion between the lawyer and the agent is for the lawyer to get what the agent knows in the course of the investigation and get it written up so that you get the approvals that you need. I'm sure that happened here. Did not come up, does not come up to my level to have that kind of discussion.
All right, so it is fair to say that you were not part of any conversations with respect to whether or not something along the lines of an indictment should be considered for the reporter, but you do not know whether or not the conversations took place. But you yourself were not part of them.
I was not and had none.
Okay. Does the Bureau have a policy with respect to shopping judges or not shopping judges? If you go to a magistrate or you go to an Article III judge and you're denied, is there a policy within the Bureau on judge shopping?
No, not that I'm aware of.
All right, let me switch gears. There was an allegation this week of American diplomats being involved in the alleged solicitation of prostitution overseas. Would the Bureau have jurisdiction to investigate that?
I have to look at that. Initially I would say, well, I'd have to look at it. I'd say no, but there may be, off the top of my head, maybe I'm missing something. I have to get back to you on that.
If there were an allegation that the State Department attempted to interfere with or influence the investigation, is that something the Bureau would have jurisdiction over?
In first instance, I'm not certain. We may. Going back to the question about the activities overseas, if it implicated the disclosure of U.S. secrets, for instance, then we would have perhaps some predication for being involved in the overarching investigation. As to the second question, I just can't say.
I've been out of the business for a while, but I think it may be a crime to travel for the purpose of soliciting underage sex. I could be wrong about that.
Underage, yes.
All right.
I do believe that that would be covered, but I have to check on that. I have not done.
All right.
Thank you. I have not done this work for some time.
Yes, sir. All right, finally, with respect to Benghazi, and this is not a trick question, I think the answer is obvious. The quicker you get to a crime scene, the better you're going to be able to investigate it and process it, right?
Absolutely.
All right, and the Bureau did not get to the crime scene in Benghazi for how long?
I think 2 weeks.
And why did the Bureau not get to the crime scene in Benghazi for 2 weeks?
There were a number of factors. And the first one relates to the state of security in Benghazi. There was no security.
All right, I
Second
want
relates
to just stop you there because I want to ask one more question and my time is out. I am asked all the time back home in South Carolina, if Benghazi was not safe enough for the premier law enforcement agency in the world to go, how was it safe enough for us to send diplomats?
It's another question that is not in my bailiwick. I understand the question's being asked. I presume it's a rhetorical question.
It's rhetorical unless you know the answer. I can't answer it. I don't know. I just.
All I'm saying is rhetorical or not, I can't answer it.
It is a good question.